Josephine, 65, catches her daughter-in-law Sandra on the phone. "Don't worry, Mom, Josephine always caves. She'll cook for all 38 of us like she does every year. The old doormat won't say no." Standing in my own kitchen doorway invisible, I smile. After 15 years of being their unpaid caterer maid and ATM, something inside me finally snaps. This Christmas, Sandra Thompson is about to learn that this doormat has been hiding steel underneath all along. The morning light filtering through my kitchen window caught the dust motes dancing in the air, reminding me of all the Christmas mornings I'd spent in this house. I'm Josephine Margaret Thompson, and for 40 years this colonial house in Hartford, Connecticut had been filled with love and laughter. My late husband Bill and I had built our life here, raising our only son Michael with values we thought would last a lifetime. Bill was the kind of man who never met a stranger, and I matched his warmth with my own gift for hospitality. We hosted every holiday, every celebration, our door always open. When Michael went off to Boston University, the house felt empty, but we filled it with hope for his future. That's where he met Sandra. I still remember the day Michael brought her home junior year spring break. She was beautiful in that sharp, calculating way that should have warned me. But I was so happy to see my son in love. Sandra Kathleen O'Brien came from a large Irish Catholic family in Worcester, and she knew exactly how to charm parents. She complimented my cooking, asked about family recipes, even helped with dishes that first night. "Your mother raised you right," I told Michael privately, watching Sandra chat with Bill about his work at the insurance company. The warning signs were subtle at first. Sandra would mention how cozy our house was, which I later realized meant she thought it was small. She'd ask probing questions about our finances disguised as concern for Michael's future. When they got engaged, she insisted on a wedding that cost more than Bill and I had saved, but we dipped into our retirement because we wanted Michael to be happy. That first Christmas after their wedding set the pattern for everything that followed. We'd planned an intimate family dinner, just the four of us. An hour before dinner, Sandra's phone rang. "Oh no," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "My family's car broke down nearby. 8 of them were driving to my aunt's house. Would it be okay if they stopped by?" What could I say? It was Christmas. They arrived in 2 perfectly functioning vehicles, hauling suitcases. 8 turned into a 3-day stay. Her mother, Patricia, commanded my kitchen, criticizing my turkey as dry, while eating 3 helpings. Her brothers raided Bill's liquor cabinet. Her teenage cousins left wet towels on antique furniture. Each year, the invasion grew. Sandra would always spring it on us last minute, always with an excuse. By year 5, I was cooking for 20 people, spending over $2,000 on food alone. Bill tried to set boundaries, once suggesting they should contribute or at least ask in advance. Sandra's tears could have won an Oscar. "I thought family meant something to you," she sobbed to Michael. "My family isn't rich like yours." Rich. We lived in a paid-off house and drove 10-year-old cars, but Michael took her side as he always did. "Mom, Dad, you have the space. Why are you being selfish?" When Bill's cancer diagnosis came in year 8, I thought surely Sandra would ease up. Instead, she complained about how the medical equipment in the living room would disturb her family's Christmas visit. Even as Bill grew weaker, I cooked for 25 people, cleaned up after them, smiled through my exhaustion. Bill passed the January after that Christmas. At his funeral, Sandra's mother pulled me aside. "The house must be worth quite a bit now," she said, patting my hand. "You'll be rattling around in it all alone." The audacity stunned me into silence, but worse was to come. Within a month, Sandra was suggesting I sell and move to a nice retirement community. She'd even picked out some brochures. "Mom needs time to grieve," Michael said, but half-heartedly. I could see Sandra's influence growing stronger, like ivy slowly strangling a tree. The Christmas after Bill died, 32 relatives descended. They treated my home like a hotel, me like staff. I found Sandra's cousin searching through Bill's office, looking for a pen. Her brother-in-law asked detailed questions about my pension and life insurance. But the breaking point came when I overheard Sandra's sister in the guest room talking on the phone. "The old lady's loaded," she said. "Sandy says she'll probably leave everything to Michael, and you know Sandy. She'll make sure we all get our share." That night, exhausted and grief-stricken, I cleaned up after people who saw me as nothing more than a future inheritance. But something else happened too. Clearing Sandra's purse from the counter to wipe it down her phone fell out unlocked. The family group chat was open. The messages made my blood run cold. They called me the servant, mocked my dead husband, joked about my cooking while demanding specific dishes. But one message from Sandra stood out: "Keep being nice to her. Won't be long now before we can renovate this dump." I carefully placed the phone back and continued cleaning, but inside a flame had been lit. They thought I was weak, foolish, easily manipulated. They had no idea who Josephine Thompson really was, the girl who'd put herself through college, who'd helped Bill build his business from nothing, who'd raised a son while managing the books for our company. This year would be different. Oh yes, this year would be very different indeed. 3 weeks before Christmas, the December chill had settled over Hartford. I was preparing my afternoon tea when I heard Sandra's SUV pull into my driveway. She had her own key, of course, another boundary she'd pushed until Michael insisted I give her one for emergencies. Every visit was apparently an emergency. I quickly moved to the laundry room, pretending to sort clothes. Sandra's voice carried from the kitchen as she settled in for one of her phone calls. She always put her mother on speaker, too lazy to hold the phone to her ear. "The Christmas mansion ready for us, Sandy." Patricia O'Brien's nasally voice filled my kitchen. "Getting there, Mom. You know how she is, needs prodding for everything." And the inheritance situation. My hand stilled on Bill's old flannel shirt. Sandra laughed ugly and harsh. "Jake's been doing research. Power of attorney isn't as hard to get as you'd think, especially when someone's showing signs of mental decline. She seemed fine at Thanksgiving. She's been forgetting things. Lost her keys twice last week. Couldn't remember if she'd taken her medications. Classic early dementia." The flannel slipped from my numb fingers. I'd mentioned looking for my keys because Sandra had moved them from my usual spot. The medication confusion happened when she rearranged my pill organizer. To help, "Jake will assess everything when he comes for Christmas," Sandra continued. "He says if we document enough incidents, Michael can petition for conservatorship. Then we can sell this place and get her somewhere. Appropriate." That nephew of mine always was the smart one. How's Michael handling it? He's worried about his mom, of course. I've been pointing out little things. How she repeats stories how the house is getting to be too much for her. He brought up assisted living himself last week. My knees nearly buckled. My own son. 38 people might be the final straw. Patricia cackled. Show him how she can't handle things anymore. Exactly. I've already told him she insisted on hosting everyone that I tried to talk her out of it. When she inevitably falls apart, well, I force myself to breathe silently deeply. The conversation shifted to logistics, which relatives would take, which valuables, how to price the house. They discussed my home, my life, my future like I was already gone. After Sandra left, I sat in Bill's old study for an hour, shaking. Then I went to work. The first thing I did was check Michael's home office the next time I babysat their dog. What I found turned my stomach. Spreadsheets detailing my assets, printed emails between Sandra and Jake about elder law, a folder marked Mom's Decline, with twisted documentation of normal forgetfulness. One paper made me gasp. A brochure for Sunset Gardens assisted living with a post-it note in Sandra's handwriting. Tour scheduled December 26th. Tell Em it's just to look. The credit card statements were next. I'd given Sandra a card for emergencies when Michael deployed overseas for 6 months years ago. She'd never returned it. The statements showed thousands in charges. Restaurants, shopping, even a weekend spa trip. All while telling Michael they were struggling financially. I photographed everything with my phone, careful to leave no trace. But I needed more. That evening, I ordered a set of tiny cameras online, the kind that looked like smoke detectors and picture frames. If they wanted to document my decline, I'd document their conspiracy. Over the next week, I played my part perfectly. I forgot where I put my reading glasses when Sandra visited, then found them exactly where she'd hidden them, expressing confusion. I let her see me checking my pill organizer multiple times, not mentioning I'd noticed her switching the days around. The cameras arrived within days, and I installed them myself. Bill had taught me basic home maintenance, though I'd let everyone believe I was helpless with technology. The living room, kitchen, entry hall, and Bill's study all had eyes now. My lawyer, Harold Freeman, had been Bill's friend for 30 years. I made an appointment without telling anyone. "Josephine," he said, studying the photos of documents I'd taken, "this is serious. Have they taken any action yet?" "Not officially, but Sandra's brother is a lawyer. They're planning something for after Christmas." Harold's face darkened. "Jake O'Brien, I know of him. Suspended twice for ethics violations, reinstated on technicalities." He leaned forward. "We need to protect you immediately." We spent 3 hours documenting my mental clarity, updating my will with specific language that would make it contest-proof, and setting up safeguards. Harold also had news that made my blood boil. "Sandra came to see me 6 months ago," he said carefully. "Wanted to know about your assets, claimed Michael had asked her to inquire. When I refused to discuss it, she got quite unpleasant." The drive home, I felt pieces clicking into place. Every moved object, every rearranged item, every moment of confusion she'd caused had been deliberate. She wasn't just after money. She was systematically trying to break me down to make everyone, including me, believe I was losing my mind. That night, the cameras caught their first evidence. Sandra let herself in while I was at book club, went straight to Bill's study, and photographed financial documents I'd left in the desk. She then moved my purse to the refrigerator and took a photo of it there. The next morning, she called Michael. "Honey, I stopped by to drop off those cookies, and I found your mom's purse in the fridge. I'm really worried." I listened from the extension my hand over the receiver as my son expressed concern as Sandra played the devoted daughter-in-law. When they hung up, I retrieved my purse from the refrigerator where she'd placed it like a prop in her sick play. But I smiled as I made my tea, because now I knew exactly what I was dealing with, and Josephine Thompson had faced down worse than a grifter in designer jeans. The real game was about to begin. The Hartford morning frost painted delicate patterns on my kitchen windows as I prepared for the performance of my lifetime. 2.5 weeks until Christmas, and I had a role to play. The wronged woman turning into the confused elder, slowly losing her grip while my vultures circled closer. I started small. When Michael came for Sunday dinner, I served his favorite pot roast, but asked twice if he wanted more green beans, acting flustered when he pointed out he already had some. The concern that flickered in his eyes hurt more than Sandra's schemes ever could. This was my boy, the child I'd sung to sleep, taught to ride a bike, cheered at every baseball game. Now he was watching me like I was a stranger. "Mom, are you feeling okay?" He reached across my dining table, the same one where he'd done homework for 18 years. "Of course, sweetheart, just a little tired. This big house, you know." I let my voice trail off, watched him exchange glances with Sandra. She pounced on the opening. "That's what we've been saying, Josephine. Maybe it's time to think about downsizing." I pretended to consider this, then brightened with false enthusiasm. "You know what I've been thinking about updating my will, making sure everything's in order. Bill always said to review it every few years." Sandra's fork clattered against her plate. "Oh, that's very responsible. Would you help me find a good lawyer, dear? You're so much better with these things than I am." The greed that flashed across her face was almost comical. Of course Jake could help. He specializes in estate planning. How wonderful. Family helping family. I smiled sweetly while mentally adding another recording device to my shopping list. That week, I became the detective Bill always said I could have been. Every morning after Sandra's predictable 10 o'clock check-in visit, I'd review the camera footage. She was getting bolder, photographing bank statements, testing my signature on scrap paper, even practicing my voice on her phone. The pharmacy incident nearly broke my resolve. I arrived for my blood pressure medication to find Sandra already there, speaking in hushed tones with the pharmacist about concerning confusion and medication compliance issues. She'd actually tried to get herself listed as someone who could access my medical information. Mrs. O'Brien was just expressing concern, the young pharmacist said awkwardly when I approached. How thoughtful, I replied, noting his discomfort, though I wasn't aware I'd asked anyone to pick up my prescriptions. Sandra's smile was sharp. Just trying to help Josephine. You mentioned forgetting if you'd taken your pills. I had mentioned no such thing, but I nodded vaguely. Did I? How silly of me. Later, I spoke privately with the head pharmacist, showing him my phone log proving I'd never called Sandra about prescriptions. He was appalled and put a note in my file that only I could authorize changes or pickups. The evidence mounted daily. My hidden cameras captured Sandra switching my blood pressure pills with identical-looking vitamins. She was literally trying to make me ill to support her claims. I carefully switched them back each time, documenting everything. My financial moves had to be subtle, too dramatic, and they'd accelerate their timeline. I opened new accounts at different banks, transferring money in small amounts. Told the bank manager I was diversifying for better interest rates. He didn't need to know I was building an escape fund. Harold Freeman proved invaluable. We met at his office in the evenings after his regular hours. He helped me create an ironclad power of attorney document naming my cousin Margaret in California as my agent, not Michael. We recorded video testimonies of my mental state, had me tested by an independent physician who confirmed I was sharp as ever. They're going to escalate when they realize you're onto them, Harold warned. He was right. The next Sunday, Michael arrived looking haggard. Mom Sandra found you wandering in the grocery store parking lot yesterday. You couldn't remember where you parked. I had been in no such place. The cameras showed I'd been home all day reading in Bill's chair, but I let confusion cloud my features. The grocery store, I thought I stayed home yesterday. See, Sandra interjected, practically vibrating with false concern. This is what we're talking about, Michael. My son took my hands, his own trembling. Mom, maybe we should have you checked out, just to be safe. If you think it's best, dear, I agreed, knowing Harold had already arranged for me to see his physician friend who would find me perfectly healthy. The cruelest cut came when I decided to search their house during their date night. Using the spare key from when I dog sat, I found Sandra's laptop open on the kitchen counter. Her email to Jake made me physically ill. Phase 2 working perfectly. She's accepting the narrative. M suggested the doctor himself. After Christmas disaster, we moved to Phase 3. House should sell for at least $800,000 in this market, split between family after her care costs. Her browsing history was worse. Sunset Gardens assisted living, but also articles on contesting conservatorship, how to prove elder incompetence, and most chilling, how long do dementia patients typically live? She was researching how long she'd have to wait after stealing my home. I photographed everything and left my hands shaking with rage. Back home, I made myself a cup of Bill's favorite whiskey-laced coffee and sat in his study surrounded by the evidence of my life being stolen, piece by piece. The next morning brought a new low. Sandra arrived with brochures for assisted living facilities, just to have on hand. She'd also brought Jake, who prowled my home like he was mentally calculating its worth. Aunt Josephine, he said, though we'd met exactly twice before. Sandy's worried about you. Maybe we should talk about safeguarding your assets. My assets are fine, thank you. I let a little steel show through just enough to seem defensive rather than aware. He exchanged looks with Sandra. Sometimes we need help managing things as we get older. No shame in that. I'll think about it, I said, then deliberately called him by the wrong name twice during his visit. Let him document that. That night alone in my bedroom, I allowed myself 5 minutes of grief. Not for the money or the house, but for Michael, my sweet boy who'd become a man who couldn't see his wife's evil, even as she planned to destroy his mother. I cried for the family dinners that would never be the same, the trust broken beyond repair. Then I dried my tears and got back to work. I had a cruise to book a private investigator to hire and 38 relatives to teach a lesson they'd never forget. They thought I was weak. They thought I was declining. They had no idea that Josephine Thompson was just getting started. The poker face was perfect, but underneath the steel was ready to strike. Sunday dinner arrived with the kind of pristine December evening that made Hartford look like a Christmas card. Fresh snow blanketed the lawn, and I'd prepared Michael's favorite meal down to the homemade apple pie, cooling on the counter. The stage was set for Sandra's grand announcement, and I was ready for my performance. They arrived fashionably late as always. Sandra swept in wearing a new cashmere coat that my credit card had probably purchased, while Michael looked tired from his accounting firm's busy season. As I served the roast chicken, I noticed Sandra practically vibrating with anticipation. She could barely wait through grace before launching her attack. "Josephine, we have the most wonderful news about Christmas." Her voice dripped with false sweetness as she clutched Michael's hand. I paused fork halfway to my mouth, channeling the confused elder they expected. "Christmas. Oh, are we doing something special this year?" Michael shifted uncomfortably. "Mom Sandra's family wants to join us, like they usually do." "Oh, how nice. How many this time? 10, 15? Sandra's smile widened. 38. Isn't that wonderful? The whole O'Brien clan together for the holidays. My parents, all 6 of my siblings with their spouses and children, plus Aunt Colleen's family and some cousins from New York. It'll be magical." I set down my fork carefully, letting my hand tremble just slightly. 38 people. My goodness, that's quite a gathering. "Now I know it sounds like a lot," Sandra said, producing a typed list from her purse. "But I've organized everything. See room assignments for everyone. The little ones can use sleeping bags in the den. My brothers can share the guest room. Jake needs Bill's old study for some work he's bringing. Work at Christmas." I let bewilderment color my voice. "Oh, just some legal documents. Family business." She waved dismissively before thrusting a shopping list at me. "Here's what we'll need for meals. I've calculated everything. The grocery bill should only be around $3,000. Maybe $3,500 to be safe." I stared at the list, recognizing items that had nothing to do with Christmas dinner. Cases of premium liquor, expensive seafood for her brother who couldn't eat regular food, specialty items for various invented allergies. "Sandra's already started planning the menu," Michael added weakly. "She wants to help this year." Help. In 15 years, Sandra's help consisted of criticizing and demanding, while I worked myself to exhaustion. I scanned the list again, noticing she'd included things like premium coffee designer crackers and imported cheeses. Party supplies alone totaled $500. "This is very thorough," I murmured. "But dear, I'm not sure I can manage all this. My knee's been acting up, and with my memory issues." "Oh, we'll all pitch in," Sandra lied smoothly. "Everyone's so excited. Mom's already planning her famous Irish coffee bar in the dining room. Tommy wants to set up his music equipment in the living room for caroling, and the kids are thrilled about decorating cookies with you." Decorating cookies. Last year, her nephews had destroyed my kitchen, grinding frosting into the antique rug and breaking 2 pieces of Bill's mother's china. No one had offered to clean or replace anything. I suppose, if everyone's counting on it. I let my voice waver. "They are, in fact," Sandra pulled out her phone. "Let me call Mom right now. She's dying to thank you." Before I could object, Patricia O'Brien's voice boomed through the speaker. "Josephine, you Angel Sandy says you're hosting the whole family again. You're too good to us." "Hello, Patricia. I was just saying my health isn't what it used to be." "Oh, nonsense. You're strong as an ox. Besides, Sandy will be there to manage everything. Won't you, sweetheart?" "Of course, Mom." Sandra shot me a triumphant look. Patricia steamrolled on. "Jake's especially looking forward to it. He needs to discuss some financial matters with you. Very important, he says. Something about protecting your assets." How thoughtful of him. "We're family, Josephine. Family takes care of each other. Oh, and don't worry about cooking for my brother Sean. He's bringing his new girlfriend. She's vegan, gluten-free, and allergic to nightshades, so maybe just prepare some alternatives. The call continued for 10 more minutes with Patricia adding demands disguised as grateful comments. When it finally ended, I sat back looking overwhelmed. Mom, Michael actually seemed concerned. Are you okay? I pressed my fingers to my temples. It's just so many people, and the house needs work before guests arrive. The guest bathroom faucet is leaking and the refrigerator's been making odd noises. I'll send my cousin Danny over, Sandra said quickly. He's a contractor. He can fix anything. Danny, the contractor who'd offered to buy my house for cash quick sale last Christmas. How convenient. That's very kind, dear. I pulled out my reading glasses, squinting at the shopping list. Should I start buying things this week? Yes, use the credit card, of course. Easier to track expenses. Sandra's eyes glittered. Oh, and Josephine. Maybe we should think about getting the carpets professionally cleaned, too. And the windows. We want everything perfect. Perfect. I repeated, calculating that she'd just added another $1,000 to my expenses. Yes, everything should be perfect. The rest of dinner passed with Sandra chattering about sleeping arrangements and meal schedules. She'd allocated my bedroom to her parents, assuming I'd sleep on the couch, to be near the kitchen for early breakfast prep. The casual cruelty of expecting a 65-year-old woman to give up her bed and sleep on a couch while cooking for nearly 40 people shouldn't have surprised me anymore. As they prepared to leave, Michael hugged me goodbye. Thanks for doing this, Mom. I know it's a lot, but it means so much to Sandra. I patted his cheek, my baby boy who couldn't see the wolf he'd married. Anything for family, sweetheart. Sandra was already on her phone as they walked to the car, no doubt spreading the news that the sucker had agreed to everything. I watched from behind my lace curtains as their taillights disappeared, then went to Bill's study. The cruise website glowed on my laptop screen. Royal Caribbean leaving December 23rd from Miami. Balcony suite already selected. I'd fly out the morning of the 22nd, giving myself plenty of time. The house sitter recommended by Harold and actually a licensed private investigator named Robert Chen was already scheduled. I pulled out the guest list Sandra had left and studied it. 38 people who saw me as nothing more than free food, lodging, and entertainment. 38 people who'd spent years taking advantage of my hospitality while plotting to steal everything Bill and I had built. My phone buzzed with a text from Sandra. So excited about Christmas, already told everyone. They can't wait. P.S. Mom wants to know if you still have that silver serving set. Jake's appraising some items for insurance purposes. I typed back, how thoughtful. Everything will be ready. And it would be. Just not the way she expected. I poured myself a small Sherry Bill's favorite evening drink and raised it to his photograph on the mantel. They think I'm weak, honey. They think I'm old and stupid and ready to be discarded. I took a sip, savoring the warmth. They're about to learn what Josephine Thompson is really made of. The shopping list lay on my desk like a declaration of war. $3,000 for groceries, another $2,000 for preparations. Who knew how much more for Sandra's last-minute demands. She expected me to max out my credit cards, making her family comfortable while they plotted to take my home. Instead, I'd spend that money on a luxury cruise where I'd be pampered and appreciated, where the only person I'd serve would be myself, where I'd toast the new year while Sandra's empire of lies came crashing down. I opened my notebook and began making my own list, letters to write, evidence to organize, arrangements to finalize. 38 relatives expected to feast at my expense one more time. They'd arrived to find the feast had moved on without them. The thought made me smile as I turned off the study light. 2 weeks to go. 2 weeks to maintain the facade while building my triumph. 2 weeks until Sandra learned that sometimes the doormat turns out to be a trapdoor. And I could hardly wait to pull the lever. The next morning brought a shopping expedition that would have been comedic if it weren't so calculating. Sandra arrived early, dressed in designer jeans and carrying a leather organizer that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments. Her energy was manic, the scent of victory making her reckless. I thought we'd hit Costco first, she announced, already heading for my coat closet. Bulk buying is so much more economical than Williams Sonoma for some specialty items and finally that gourmet market downtown. I moved deliberately, slowly, fumbling with my coat buttons. Oh dear, I hope I remember where I put my credit card. Sandra's eye twitched, but she maintained her smile. It's in your wallet, Josephine. Remember, we talked about keeping it somewhere consistent. Of course. I retrieved my purse, making sure to check the same pocket 3 times. Silly me. At Costco, Sandra's performance reached new heights. She commandeered the cart like a general leading troops into battle, loading it with premium everything. Filet mignon for Christmas Eve, lobster tails cases of wine that definitely weren't going to be served at dinner. I watched her add a flat-screen television to the cart. Sandra, dear, what's that for? Oh, the kids need entertainment. Your old TV in the den is so outdated. Don't worry, it's a gift for the house. She patted my arm patronizingly. You'll love it after we leave. After they took it with them, more likely. I nodded vaguely and shuffled along behind her occasionally, asking what we were shopping for, letting her repeat herself with growing impatience. The total at checkout was staggering $2,347. Sandra handed the cashier my credit card without blinking. I made a show of entering the wrong PIN twice before getting it right, noting how she watched my fingers memorizing the numbers. Williams Sonoma was worse. She selected serving platters, claiming mine were too old-fashioned, a mixer because yours sounds funny, and various gadgets that would undoubtedly disappear after Christmas. Another $800. You know, I said as she examined a $900 espresso machine. I've been thinking about your mother's call yesterday. Oh, she didn't look up from the machine's features list. She mentioned Jake has financial matters to discuss. What kind of matters? Sandra's smile was predatory. Just some estate planning, making sure you're protected. He's very good at elder law. Elder law, how specific. Well, you're not getting younger, Josephine. We have to think about the future. I wanted to ask whose future she was thinking about, but instead I pointed at a display of Christmas decorations. Oh, those are pretty. Did I already buy garland? I can't seem to remember. The flicker of satisfaction in her eyes was nauseating. No, you haven't. See, this is why we worry about you. The gourmet market was the final stop. Sandra loaded the cart with truffle oil, aged cheeses, prosciutto, and other delicacies that had never graced my Christmas table before. When she added 4 bottles of champagne at $90 each, I finally spoke up. That seems excessive, dear. It's Christmas. Besides, Jake loves this brand. He has such sophisticated tastes. Jake, who I'd seen drink beer from a can at Michael's birthday. But I just nodded and watched another $600 drain from my account. Back at my house, Sandra directed the unloading like a symphony conductor. I noticed she had me carry the lightest bags, making comments about my fragility, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Mrs. Patterson from next door gave me a concerned look, which Sandra caught. She's been having some trouble, Sandra stage whispered to Mrs. Patterson. We're keeping an eye on her. After Sandra left, I sat in my kitchen surrounded by thousands of dollars of groceries I'd never eat. Then I got to work. Every receipt was photographed and filed. I called each store explaining I'd be returning everything after December 22nd due to family emergency. The managers were understanding, especially after I mentioned the unusual purchases my daughter-in-law had made. That evening, I made my own shopping trip. The security system upgrade was expensive but necessary. The technician recommended by Robert Chen installed new locks with codes, only I would know cameras that backed up to the cloud and a panic button that would alert both the security company and Harold Freeman. Having some trouble, Mrs. Thompson? The technician asked gently. Just taking precautions, I replied. Family can be complicated. He nodded knowingly. The cameras will catch everything. Audio too, all admissible in court if needed. The week progressed with military precision. I played my part perfectly, calling Sandra twice to ask about the menu, each time acting like it was the first time we'd discussed it. She grew more confident with each interaction, not realizing I was recording everything. Michael stopped by midweek, finding me in the garden pruning Bill's roses. Mom, you'll freeze out here, he said, wrapping his jacket around my shoulders. Oh, Michael, I didn't hear you come up. I blinked at him owlishly. What brings you by? Just checking on you. Sandra said you seemed confused at the store. I let my lower lip tremble. I've been trying so hard, sweetheart, but sometimes I feel like I'm losing pieces of myself. He hugged me then, and for a moment I felt him shake. My boy was scared. Part of me wanted to tell him everything to show him what his wife was doing, but I knew he wouldn't believe me. Not yet. He needed to see it for himself. Maybe after Christmas, he said carefully, we could look at some places. Smaller, easier to manage. Whatever you think is best, dear. That night I wrote letters, one for each of the 38 relatives detailing what I knew about their part in this scheme. Copies of emails, screenshots of texts, transcripts of recorded conversations. Harold had helped me phrase everything legally, making sure each letter was bulletproof. The letter to Michael was the hardest. I must have started it a dozen times trying to find words that would penetrate the fog of Sandra's manipulation. Finally, I settled on simple truth, backed by irrefutable evidence. The cruise documents arrived by express mail. First-class flight to Miami luxury suite on the ship, every amenity included. It cost less than what Sandra had spent on groceries for her invasion. The irony wasn't lost on me. I also received a package from Robert Chen. Inside were business cards identifying him as Robert Chen House Sitting and Property Management. His credentials were impressive, former detective licensed investigator, bonded and insured. He'd be staying in my home from December 22nd through January 2nd with strict instructions to admit no one without written permission from me. They'll test him, Harold had warned. Probably claim family emergencies, say you told them they could come in. Let them try, I'd replied. Robert has the patience of a saint and the documentation skills of a court reporter. The hidden cameras throughout my house captured everything. Sandra sneaking in while I was at physical therapy, photographing my financial documents. Her brother Jake dropping by to case the house, testing windows and doors. Even her mother Patricia, who came for tea and spent the entire time asking about Bill's life insurance and whether I had savings bonds. You must be so lonely, Patricia cooed, helping herself to a fourth piece of coffee cake. This big house all by yourself. Wouldn't somewhere smaller be cozier? Perhaps you're right, I agreed, pouring her more tea with a shaky hand. Although I do love my garden. Gardens are so much work. At your age, you should be relaxing. At my age, I was 3 years younger than Patricia, who spent her days playing tennis and planning exotic vacations. But I smiled and nodded the confused elder, grateful for guidance. By Friday, December 20th, everything was in place. The refrigerator was still full of Sandra's purchases. The house gleamed from the professional cleaning she'd insisted on. The new television sat in the den, still in its box, despite her hints about setting it up. I spent that evening in Bill's study reviewing my preparations one last time. Cruise documents check. Letters ready for mailing check. Security system armed and recording check. Robert Chen confirmed for arrival check. New bank accounts that Sandra didn't know about check. The phone rang and Sandra's name appeared on the caller ID. I took a deep breath and answered in my best confused elderly voice. Hello. Josephine, just confirming everything for Monday. The family starts arriving at noon. I'll be there at 10 to help set up. Monday. What's Monday, dear? A pause. Christmas, Josephine. The family Christmas dinner. Remember? Oh, of course. How silly of me. Yes, everything's ready. Good. And Josephine Jake really needs to use Bill's study. You haven't moved anything in there, have you? No, dear. Everything's just as Bill left it. Perfect. We'll get some rest. You'll need your energy. I hung up and smiled. Yes, I'd need my energy. For lounging on a deck chair with a good book and a tropical drink. For enjoying 5-star dining without cooking a single meal. For sleeping in a bed I didn't have to give up for ungrateful guests. The preparation game was over. The trap was set. In 48 hours, Sandra would arrive expecting to find a confused old woman ready to sign over her life. Instead, she'd find something else entirely. December 23rd dawned crisp and bright, the kind of winter morning that made Hartford look like a Thomas Kincaid painting. I'd been awake since 4, not from anxiety, but from anticipation. My suitcases stood ready by the door, and I moved through my morning routine with the efficiency of a woman who'd waited 15 years for this moment. The taxi was scheduled for 8:30, giving me time for one last walk through my home. I touched Bill's photograph in the hallway, straightened a cushion on the sofa Sandra's relatives had stained with red wine 3 Christmases ago, and paused in the kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals for people who saw me as nothing more than hired help. At precisely 8:25, I placed the envelope on the kitchen counter, my name written across the front in careful script impossible to miss. Inside the letter that would change everything. The doorbell rang. My chariot to freedom had arrived. "Airport, please," I told the driver, settling into the back seat with my carry-on. "Terminal A." As we pulled away, I didn't look back. Josephine Thompson was leaving the building, and she had no intention of returning until the new year. The flight to Miami was smooth first-class accommodations courtesy of my secret savings account. I sipped champagne at 30,000 feet, imagining Sandra's face when she arrived at my empty house. The thought paired beautifully with the bubbles. By 2 o'clock, I was boarding the Majesty of the Seas, my home for the next 10 days. The suite was glorious with a private balcony overlooking the ocean. I unpacked leisurely, hanging my new dresses in the closet, arranging my toiletries in the marble bathroom. No relatives would be using my space, stealing my towels, criticizing my choices. My phone buzzed with the first message at exactly 3:17. Sandra had arrived early, eager to begin her final phase of conquest. I turned off red receipts so she wouldn't know I was watching her meltdown in real time. "Josephine, where are you? Your car is here, but you're not answering the door." 10 minutes later, I'm using my key. "Are you okay, Josephine?" Then, "What is this? Call me immediately." I smiled and ordered room service. Shrimp cocktail seemed appropriate for the occasion. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away, my letter was doing its work. "Dear Michael and Sandra, by the time you read this, I'll be aboard a cruise ship enjoying the vacation I've earned after 15 years of unpaid labor. I'm not confused, forgetful, or suffering from dementia. I'm simply done. Sandra. I know about everything. The drugged tea, the moved objects, the plans with Jake to declare me incompetent and steal my home. I have recordings of your phone calls, videos of you breaking into my house, copies of the emails discussing my decline and how to profit from it. The refrigerator is full of the groceries you so generously purchased with my credit card. I'm sure your 38 relatives will appreciate them. The house is secure, monitored by cameras, and under the protection of a licensed investigator who has strict instructions to admit no one. I've canceled the credit cards you've been using for your shopping sprees. The locks have been changed. Your access to my life ends today. Michael, I've loved you since the moment you were born, but you chose to believe your wife over the mother who raised you. You participated in planning to put me in a home so you could sell the house your father and I built with love. That betrayal cuts deeper than any knife. If you want to speak with me when I return, you'll need to come alone without Sandra and be prepared to see evidence of what you've both done. I've provided copies to my attorney, Harold Freeman, who has instructions to pursue criminal charges for elder abuse fraud and attempted theft if any of you attempt to enter my home or access my accounts. To the 38 relatives expecting free room and board Merry Christmas, Hartford has lovely hotels. I suggest you book quickly. Sandra, that television you bought as a gift. It's being donated to the senior center, along with all the other items you plan to steal after the holidays. I'm not your servant, your meal ticket, or your victim. I'm Josephine Margaret Thompson, and I'm finally free. Don't attempt to contact me during my cruise. I'll be too busy remembering who I am when I'm not cooking, cleaning, and financing your lives. Josephine. P.S. The security system recorded everything, including you practicing my signature, Sandra. Forgery is a felony. My phone exploded with calls and texts. Michael's number appeared again and again. Patricia O'Brien left a voicemail screeching about family obligations. Jake threatened legal action. I turned off the phone and headed to the welcome reception. Robert Chen, my stalwart house sitter, began his own documentation. His first report arrived via email as I was selecting dinner options. 3:47 p.m. S. Thompson attempted entry with old key. Informed locks changed. Demanded entry for family emergency. Denied. She called police. 4:15 p.m. Police arrived. Shown my credentials and your written instructions. Officers left after confirming no emergency. 4:32 p.m. Male subject matching J. O'Brien description attempted to jimmy back door. Recorded on camera. Warned him police were being called. He fled. 5:00 p.m. Multiple vehicles arriving. Count approximately 15 to 20 individuals on lawn, demanding entry for Christmas dinner. Explained situation. Growing agitated. 5:23 p.m. Monsieur Thompson arrived. Attempted to reason with me. Seemed genuinely distressed. Showed him your letter per instructions. He left with S. Thompson following, arguing loudly. 5:45 p.m. Elderly woman P. O'Brien throwing rocks at windows. Called police again. 6:00 p.m. Police dispersing crowd. Several citations issued for disturbance and attempted property damage. Will continue monitoring. House secure. Merry Christmas, Mrs. T. I raised my glass of wine to the sunset beyond my balcony. Merry Christmas indeed, Robert. The ship's photographer was actually an old friend from my book club, Janet Morrison, who'd volunteered for this particular assignment. She made sure to capture plenty of shots of me enjoying myself, dancing at the captain's reception, lounging by the pool, dining with new friends, all date-stamped and geotagged, providing an ironclad alibi. You look 10 years younger already, Janet said, snapping a photo of me in my new sundress. I feel it, I admitted, like I've put down 1,000-pound weight. Back in Hartford, the situation was deteriorating beautifully. Robert's emails painted a picture of chaos. December 24th, 10:00 a.m. S. Thompson returned with more relatives. Attempted to set up camping chairs on lawn. I informed them this was trespassing. They refused to leave. 10:30 a.m. Called police. Officer Mitchell responded, case number 24-12579. Crowd ordered to disperse. S. Thompson claimed she lived here. Officer requested proof. She could not provide. 11:00 a.m. Large man attempted to break down front door. Security footage clear. Assault charges recommended by Officer Mitchell. Man identified as D. O'Brien, Sandra's brother. 12:00 p.m. Certified letters being delivered to relatives at their hotels per your instructions. Multiple signature confirmations received. 2:00 p.m. Local news van arrived. S. Thompson attempting to portray you as missing elderly woman with dementia. I provided reporter with your attorney's contact. Story killed after Freeman provided documentation of your mental competency. 4:00 p.m. Monsieur Thompson returned alone. Spent 20 minutes sitting in driveway crying. Did not attempt entry. Left single rows on porch. 6:00 p.m. Delivery attempted of 38 dinners from local restaurant. Bill in S. Thompson's name. Refused delivery. She apparently expected you to pay. House remains secure. Neighbors expressing support after learning situation. Mrs. Patterson brought me cookies. I spent Christmas Eve at the ship's gala wearing the dress I'd bought with cash so Sandra wouldn't see the charge. The captain made a toast to new beginnings, and I felt it deep in my bones. This was my new beginning, my revolution, my Independence Day. Michael finally sent an email instead of calling. I read it on Christmas morning while dolphins played in the ship's wake. Mom! I don't know what to say. Harold showed me everything. The recordings, the videos, the medical records showing you're completely healthy. I saw the footage of Sandra drugging your tea. I can't believe I was so blind. Sandra's family has destroyed our rental house. Her mother broke every dish, throwing them at Sandra. Her brothers got into a fistfight in the yard. The police have been here 4 times. I've asked Sandra to leave. She's refusing, saying I'm overreacting. But I heard her on the phone with Jake planning to sue you for elder abandonment. Harold says they have no case. I found the receipts. $47,000 charged to your cards over 3 years. Money I thought you were spending on yourself. God, Mom, I'm so sorry. The rose was from me. Dad grew that variety for you. Remember, I've been sitting in his study looking at your wedding photos, wondering how I became someone who would betray his own mother. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I see it all now. Every manipulation, every lie, every cruel thing she made you endure, while I stood by and let it happen. Enjoy your cruise, Mom. You deserve it. You deserve so much more than we gave you. I love you, Michael. I wiped my tears and put the phone away. There would be time for that conversation later. Today was Christmas, and for the first time in 15 years, I was spending it exactly as I wished. The ship's crew had prepared a magnificent dinner. I sat at a table with other solo travelers sharing stories and laughter. No one criticized my cooking or demanded special accommodations. No one treated me like a servant or plotted to steal my home. "What brings you here alone on Christmas?" asked a lovely woman named Grace. I smiled, raising my glass. Freedom. What better gift could I give myself? As midnight approached in Hartford, Robert sent his final update of the day. December 25th, 11:45 p.m., all quiet. S. Thompson's family appears to have dispersed to various hotels after major argument in parking lot. Neighbors report S. Thompson and Monsieur Thompson had significant confrontation, resulting in her departure. Your home is secure and undamaged. I've watered the plants and collected the mail as instructed. The Pattersons invited me for Christmas dinner. Hope you don't mind, I accepted. Merry Christmas, Mrs. T. What you did took courage. Enjoy every moment. I stood on my balcony as December 25th turned to December 26th, watching the moonlight dance on the waves. Somewhere in Hartford, Sandra was discovering that Sunset Gardens Assisted Living had received an anonymous tip about potential elder abuse, complete with documentation. Her brother Jake would be receiving a visit from the Bar Association about ethics violations. The relatives who'd planned to spend a free week in my home were paying premium hotel rates during the holiday season. And I was free. Gloriously, magnificently, finally free. The Christmas bombshell had detonated exactly as planned, leaving destruction in its wake. But sometimes you have to burn down the old to make room for the new. Tomorrow I'd swim in the pool and read a book without interruption. I'd eat meals I didn't cook and clean up messes I didn't make. I'd remember what it felt like to be Josephine Thompson, not someone's doormat or servant or victim. The best Christmas gift I'd ever received was the one I'd given myself the gift of saying, enough. New Year's Day arrived with Miami's sunshine warming my face as I disembarked from the cruise ship. 10 days of freedom had transformed me. My skin glowed from daily swims, my step was lighter, and my spine was straighter than it had been in years. The woman who boarded this ship had been escaping. The woman leaving it was returning to reclaim her life. Harold Freeman himself picked me up at the airport, his usually serious face breaking into a smile when he saw me. "Josephine, you look magnificent," he said, taking my luggage. "Ready to face the music?" "Harold, I've been conducting the orchestra from 3,000 miles away. Time to take my bow." He updated me during the drive home. The letters I'd sent to each relative had created a domino effect of family destruction. Sandra's carefully constructed image had shattered when her relatives realized they'd been accomplices to attempted elder fraud. Several had contacted Harold to distance themselves from the scheme, providing additional evidence in hopes of avoiding prosecution. "Jake O'Brien is under investigation by the state bar," Harold said with satisfaction. "Turns out you weren't his first victim. 3 other elderly clients have come forward." But it was Michael's situation that made my heart ache. Harold explained that my son had filed for divorce on December 27th after discovering Sandra had opened credit cards in his name too. She'd been planning her exit strategy all along, accumulating debt, she could leave him with while hiding assets in her family's names. "He's been staying in a hotel," Harold said gently. "He comes by your house every day hoping you'll return. Robert says he just sits in the driveway sometimes, looking lost." We turned onto my street to find it peaceful, almost eerily so after the chaos Robert had reported. My house stood intact, dignified despite the attempted siege. Mrs. Patterson was watering her garden and waved enthusiastically when she saw me. Inside, Robert Chen had left everything immaculate. A detailed report sat on my kitchen counter along with a USB drive containing all the security footage. Fresh flowers stood in a vase with a note, "Welcome home, Mrs. T. You're an inspiration. Robert." I'd barely settled in when the doorbell rang. Michael stood on my porch holding a box and looking like he'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. His clothes hung loose, his face was drawn, and his eyes held a grief I recognized from my own mirror after Bill died. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly. "May I come in?" I studied my son, this man who'd been ready to put me in a home for money. But I also saw the boy who'd brought me dandelions, who'd cried when his goldfish died, who'd promised to take care of me after Bill's funeral. That boy was still in there underneath Sandra's influence. "Just you?" I asked. "Just me, always just me from now on." He held up the box. "These are yours, things Sandra took over the years. I found them in our attic." I stepped aside and let him in. The box contained my mother's pearl necklace, Bill's watch, several pieces of silver, and photograph albums I thought I'd misplaced. At the bottom lay our family Christmas ornaments, the ones Sandra had declared too old-fashioned and replaced with her modern decorations. She had a storage unit, Michael explained, his voice breaking, "full of things from your house, my apartment, even items from my office. She's been stealing from everyone, Mom, everyone who trusted her." We sat in the living room where he'd taken his first steps, where Bill had taught him to tie his shoes, where we told him stories and shared dreams. Now it was time for truth. "Show me," I said simply. For the next 3 hours, I played the recordings, showed the videos, shared the evidence of Sandra's systematic campaign to destroy me. Michael wept when he heard her drugging instructions, raged when he saw her practicing my signature, and crumbled when he realized how deeply he'd failed me. "You were right there," he kept saying. "Right there, telling me you were fine, and I chose to believe her instead. What kind of son does that—" "One who was being manipulated by an expert," I said, surprising myself with the lack of anger in my voice. 10 days of sun and self-care had given me perspective. "She didn't just con you, Michael. She conned her entire family into believing they were entitled to what we'd built." We talked through the night, unraveling 15 years of deception. Sandra had been playing a long game, choosing Michael specifically because she'd researched our family knew about Bill's successful business, saw the potential inheritance. Every moment had been calculated, from their chance meeting to her insistence on hosting holidays at my house to establish residency claims. "The pregnancy was fake," Michael said hollowly. "She was never pregnant. Just another manipulation to get me to move faster on taking your house." By dawn, we'd reached a fragile understanding. Trust would take time to rebuild, but the foundation was there. Michael had already started therapy, was working with a forensic accountant to untangle Sandra's financial web, and had moved back to Hartford to face what he'd done. The legal proceedings moved swiftly. Sandra, faced with overwhelming evidence, agreed to a quiet divorce rather than criminal prosecution. She lost everything in the settlement, including the sympathy of her own family, who discovered she'd been stealing from them too. The O'Brien clan, so eager to feast at my table, scattered to the winds, their greed-fueled alliance shattered. Jake was disbarred after the investigation revealed a pattern of elder abuse. Patricia O'Brien sent me a letter of apology, so insincere, I framed it as a reminder to never ignore red flags again. The relatives who'd planned to spend Christmas in my home faced their own financial reckonings after paying peak holiday rates for hotels and meals. I did sell the big house, but not because anyone forced me to. I bought a beautiful 2-bedroom condo with top-notch security and a view of the park. The rest of the money went into trust funds that no future Sandra could touch. I also bought that beach cottage in Maine I'd always dreamed of, where the sound of waves replaced the memory of ungrateful voices. Michael and I began rebuilding slowly. Weekly lunches became dinners, which became genuine conversations. He did the work, real work, to understand how he'd become someone who would betray his mother for a manipulative spouse. Therapy helped, but actions mattered more. He volunteered with elder advocacy groups, learning how common Sandra's tactics were. He became fierce about protecting others from what he'd nearly done to me. The next Christmas was small but perfect. Just Michael, me, and 2 close friends at my beach cottage. I cooked because I wanted to, not because anyone expected it. We used my mother's china and Bill's grandmother's silver, rescued from Sandra's hoard. Michael gave me one gift, a framed photo from my cruise showing me laughing at the captain's dinner, radiantly happy. "This is how I want to see you, Mom," he said, free. As I write this, it's been 3 years since my Christmas revolution. Michael has found love again with a kindergarten teacher named Amy, who treats me with genuine respect and affection. They ask to visit, never demand. They contribute to meals, never expect service. When they married last summer, Amy specifically said in her vows that she was grateful to join a family that knew the value of boundaries and respect. Sandra vanished into obscurity, last heard of trying the same scheme with a wealthy widower in Phoenix. He'd been warned by his daughter, who'd read about our case online. The internet, it seems, has a long memory for those who prey on the elderly. I travel often now, taking the cruises and trips Bill and I had postponed for someday. I've learned to salsa in Miami, seen the northern lights in Alaska, walked the Camino in Spain. My passport is full of stamps that prove I'm living, not just existing. But the greatest change is internal. I no longer apologize for taking up space in my own life. I don't explain my decisions or justify my boundaries. When people show me who they are, I believe them the first time. The woman who cooked for 38 ungrateful relatives is gone, replaced by someone who knows her worth, can't be measured in meals cooked or floors cleaned. Last week, Mrs. Patterson and I were having tea when she mentioned her daughter-in-law was bringing 12 relatives for Easter without asking. "What should I do?" she asked desperately. I smiled and pulled out a cruise brochure. I know just the thing. The cycle of exploitation stops when we stop participating, when we value ourselves enough to say no, when we remember that family is defined by love and respect, not blood and obligation, when we realize that the best gift we can give ourselves is permission to be free. This Christmas, I'll be in Paris fulfilling a dream Bill and I shared. Michael and Amy will spend the holiday with her family, and that's perfectly fine. We'll video chat on Christmas morning, sharing love across the miles without obligation or guilt. Sandra taught me many things through her cruelty, but the most important was this: I'm not required to set myself on fire to keep other people warm. To those reading this story, wondering if they see themselves in my experience, let me ask you this. How many holidays have you sacrificed to people who don't appreciate you? How many times have you been treated like a servant in your own home? How many relatives see you as a resource to be exploited rather than a person to be cherished? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, remember this: it's never too late to book that cruise. It's never too late to change the locks. It's never too late to discover who you are when you're not serving everyone else's needs. The best part of my story isn't the revenge or the justice, though both were satisfying. It's that at 68 years old, I finally learned to put myself first. I learned that no is a complete sentence. I learned that family who would manipulate and steal from you aren't family at all. This holiday season, give yourself the gift I gave myself: freedom. Set boundaries. Demand respect. Refuse to be anyone's doormat. Trust me, the view from the deck of a cruise ship beats the view from behind a kitchen sink any day. And if someone tells you 38 relatives are coming for dinner, smile sweetly and book that vacation. You deserve it more than you know. What boundaries will you set this holiday season? Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took advantage of your kindness? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose yourself. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of empowerment and second chances. Thank you for joining me on this journey from doormat to diamond. Remember, you're never too old to start living life on your own terms. Wishing you all a holiday season filled with respect, genuine love, and the freedom to celebrate however brings you joy. Until next time, this is Josephine reminding you that the best gift you can give yourself is the courage to say enough.